you know what? You know what? Just to prove a point, I might dip it a third time. Yeah. Hello, you dirty potters. How are you today? Today we're going to talk about something really important when we talk about producing a large body of artwork. Today, I'm going to teach you guys how to use wax resist. Wax resist is a wax-like substance that, resist things. And it's one of the more valuable tools that any potter who's producing a large body of work can have in their arsenal. For me personally, I'm going through this phase of my life right now because I'm making a bunch of stuff in order to open my new online store coming soon. And so I have the pleasure of spending long nights with a screen of anime in front of me with a bottle of wax resist, a brush, and whatever I'm working on. Now, if you're wondering where to get a bottle of wax resist, they sell them at bigceramicstore.com, they sell them at laguna.com, Amico, they sell them almost anywhere. But if you would like, I do have a discount code in the description below that'll save you a couple of shekels on a bottle of wax resist with Big Ceramic Store. Now, there are a bunch of ways to use wax resist. You can use them as decoration, you can put wax resist on the bottom of your feet of your pots to make sure it's less trouble for glazing, you can make sure that you do a little stylistic thing on it, you can draw little happy faces. But today we're going to go over the most common and basic way that people use wax resist. I will make a playlist showing you guys how to do all the other stuff, but today in this video we're just going to go over the most common way that people use wax resist to produce their work, especially if you're creating a very large body of work and you want to save yourself some extra time in producing your work. This is one of the best ways to do it. Now, before we get started, there's a couple things you're going to want. Firstly, we're going to need whatever glaze that you're going to use for the day. I happen to have a very large bucket of glaze here in which we'll be using in this demo today. You're also of course going to need your piece of pottery you're working on and a brush. I heavily suggest that you get a brush specifically for wax resist. Don't let your paintbrush and your wax resist brush and the brush that you brush your hair with be the same brush. Don't do that. This brush that I have here is specifically for this bottle of wax resist. Oh no! This brush that I have here is specifically for this bottle of wax resist. And of course, you're also gonna need a bottle of wax resist because duh. Now, before we start this video, I want to explain to you why using wax resist was so life-changing for the high majority of potters who produce a large body of work. You see, a long time ago, us potters used to get a bucket of water and a sponge.
Little.
Glaze would get all over this piece. There's almost nothing we could do about it. So we would have to get a wet sponge and wash off, or at least rub off, the high majority of the glaze. Because of course, we can't leave this on here, it would stick to our kiln shelves. It's a glass-like material that'll probably ruin parts of our kiln if we left it on. And we would do this all day long, no matter how much work we produced. We'd produce hundreds and hundreds of bowls, and we would just do this all day and night, eroding away our wrists, wasting buckets of glaze. And keep in mind, each and every time you do this, you have to take the same sponge that you just used, re-dip it back into the water to clean off the sponge, wring it out, and then you'd have to start the process all over again. But one guy was like, this is taking too much time, and I hate my life sitting here for hours on end doing this. So he started experimenting with substances, and he found one that resists glaze. So now what many of us do is just take a good look at the bottom of our pots. That's a nice bottom. We go ahead, get our brush, and we just make sure that we coat a very nice even layer on the very bottom of our pots of wax resist. It's okay if you want to get a little bit inside the foot, and it's definitely okay if you want to get a little bit outside of the foot. This is one of the reasons why I choose to use a brush like this, is because at a certain point, if you put this brush over it and it spins, this will touch the sides, like right here, of the piece. But if you got something that was super rigid, or even if you got something that was like this, a fan brush, it would just touch there's no way I'm getting this only on the foot of the piece. It's getting all over the piece if I did this and dipped it in wax resist, right? So I like to get a smaller than usual brush that's very easily morphed with its bristles. This way it can touch a little bit of the sides. This is another one of the reasons I like to have a dedicated brush specifically for this wax resist job.
Don't touch me!
Now let's see what happens when I dip this pot into my bucket of glaze. But this time, something different's gonna happen. Look at that, the wax resist just shoved off all the glaze from the bottom of the foot. And I also want to show you guys what it looks like on a white piece of clay, simply because I know we just did it on a brown piece, but the difference between a brown piece and some red glaze is really not too contrasting when you think about white versus dark red glaze. It's a little bit difficult to see on red clay, so let me show you on a white clay body. Look at that, it just fell right off. Now you can really see the difference now that it's on white clay. You know what? Just to prove my point, I might just dip it again. Look, as soon as I come out, no glazes on here. This is gonna save me a bunch of time on my production work. Now, all I really have to do is set this down with my tongs, let it dry, and I can do it. You know what? Just to prove a point, I might dip it a third time. Yeah, how you like me now? Okay, look, I know I got a little bit too excited with the wax resist, but you would be too if you just cut like 1/4 of your effort in half because you no longer have to wipe off the bottom of your clay. And do you guys remember I was talking to you earlier about getting it a little bit more on the inside of the foot ring? You can really see that super clean glaze line, that super clean, straight glaze line, because all I did is make the glaze line with wax resist before I even glazed this thing. And you can also see what I was talking about earlier when you look on the inside of the foot ring, how there's a glaze line for that too. Now the glaze on the inside has less of a chance of running off my kiln shelves just because I have a little more space underneath the ring right here. Granted, when you do get this out, you probably should hold it upside down until it dries all the way, because gravity is still taking the water and the glaze minerals downwards towards Earth, because that's the way gravity works. But now I can just set this down when it's dry and work on my next piece. Since discovering wax resist, my production work has gotten a lot faster, much like learning how to throw off the hump. You do still technically have to clean a tiny bit on the foot ring. You can't just leave this stuff on, but now like 90% of the work is done for me. Now instead of sitting here and rubbing this off all day, I can literally just do this, right? And I got the high majority of it off. Look. Now I can just set this down, and it's pretty much ready for the kiln. Look, the glaze in there refuses to go over the glaze line. It's just moving around the middle of the foot ring, but it refuses to go past the glaze line because that's that resistant. Well, thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. I really just wanted to give you guys this one video before we do the rest of the stuff, because there's so many different techniques I can do with wax resist, but I need to show you guys the primary way that the high majority of potters use it first. Seriously, like 90% of the potters that I know use wax resist for this one purpose. They're like, look, man, I gotta sell my stuff because I make too much stuff, and I don't want to do all the extra work of cleaning off my bottoms. I'd much rather just wax that booty. But once again, thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. If you'd like to see any of my artwork or join the Discord or the Facebook fan page to keep up with the channel, the links are always down below for your beautiful potter eyes to see. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you, Dirty Potters, next week. I overglazed this piece so much that it has been like 10 minutes and it is still wet. I need to move this because I have work to do.